If you like my video, please consider supporting me on Patreon, commenting, or subscribing. Thank you. On today's episode, I am so excited. The reason I'm so excited is because I get to talk about one of my favorite 1980s arcade games, Mat Mania. Okay, sure, if you've watched my previous videos, and I'm really thankful if you did, you'll know that other games have been deemed my favorite. But this one holds a special place in my heart. We are going to take a look at one of the first arcade wrestling games that wasn't just a button masher, but actually had depth. What is the connection between this game and pro wrestling for the NES? What famous celebrities are in the crowd for a little man-on-man action? Let's find out as we take a look at the history of Mat Mania. The year is 1985. Noriyuki Tomoyama is deciding how best to implement his ideas for his next pro wrestling game. Whoa, stop the clock. We can't keep talking about this game until we talk about its spiritual predecessor, Tag Team Wrestling. Tag Team Wrestling is a 1983 arcade game released by Data East and developed by Technos. You take the control of two players as they set out to win the World Tag Team titles. The controls are menu-based, where once the two wrestlers touch, a grapple is initiated and you select your move from a list. You repeat this until the opponent is down and you can pin them. This game was the very first title I bought from my trusty but perhaps rusty Commodore 64, and I still play it every so often. The moves are very limited as this is the first wrestling game in the arcade. It is very dated by today's standard, but it led to bigger and better things. Mat Mania was developed by Technos and released by Taito. After the success of Tag Team Wrestling, development was started in 1984 on this game. During that time, something big happened that changed the landscape of wrestling forever. A 6'4" orange goblin by the name of Hulk Hogan debuted, and he took over the wrestling world by storm. If you were a kid back in the 80s and also a wrestling fan, chances are it was because of Hulk Hogan. There was also a ton of merchandise available, including figures, t-shirts, ice cream bars, cartoons, and for the first time since the 1950s, pro wrestling was on network TV. Not only did pro wrestling explode in North America, but all over the world there was a resurgence. In Mat Mania, you take the control of Dynamite Tommy, clearly inspired by Tommy Billington, otherwise known as the Dynamite Kid, as he sets out to become the TWA World Champion. You have to defeat 5 opponents to receive a title shot. Your 5 opponents are the Insane Warrior, or Warrior if you're playing the Japanese version. This is a rather blatant ripoff of Road Warrior Animal. His moveset is very similar to his real-life counterpart, including a Gorilla Press Slam as his power move. Karate Fighter looks to be inspired by the Great Kabuki. He uses a lot of strikes, kicks, and chops. Coco Savage is a Brazilian wrestler inspired by Bobo Brazil. He uses the Mongolian chop, the giant swing, and a body splash when you are laid out. In my opinion, he is one of the toughest opponents to beat in the game. The Piranha, or Piranha, is taken after Mil Mascaras. He is a heel or bad guy wrestler who uses a lot of illegal tactics such as choking and biting and the dreaded eye gouge of doom. And finally, the champion of the world is Blues Bloody, who was a dead ringer for Bruiser Brody, right down to his furry wrestling boots. His wrestling moves reflect his real-life counterpart, including the dropkick, one-armed body slam, and a leg drop. The US version of this game changes the name to Golden Hulk after the rise of Hulkamania. If you can make it through all these opponents, you will win the championship belt in a nice title induction ceremony. This was the first game to actually have depth. You have a punch and a kick button and a wide variety of wrestling moves. You can Irish whip your opponent and give them a shoulder block, sunset flip, or a clothesline. You have to weaken your opponent first before you pull off the more powerful moves. Once this happens, you are then able to perform a suplex or a pile driver. If they are on the mat long enough, you can take to the top rope to either drop a knee or a senton somersault. This was also the first wrestling game to let you perform a crossbody splash or a plancha. As I mentioned, the celebrities are out in abundance. Take a look in the crowd and you will see 1980s mainstays such as Princess Leia, the Alien, Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, ZZ Top, John Travolta, Stevie Wonder, Superman, Popeye, Batman and Robin, and the original Imperial Darth Vader. Now, I may know a lot, but believe it or not, I don't know everything. Let me know down below if you spot somebody I didn't recognize. What was the reasoning behind all of the celebrities in the crowd? Hulk Hogan rose to prominence, and with him came all of the celebrities. It was the hip, cool thing to do to watch the Hulkster try to stop the nefarious Roddy Piper. Halfway through development, they added the celebrities in the crowd, and later changed Blues Bloody to the Golden Hulk. Take a look at the dropkick that Blues Bloody uses in the game. Did the Hulkster ever do that? Let's hear what the man himself had to say about this.
At my age, my feet don't leave the ground.
This game has a connection to pro wrestling on the NES. Mr. Tomiyama and Nintendo employee Masato Masuda were colleagues and fans of professional wrestling. After seeing what Mr. Tomiyama had accomplished with Mat Mania, he took inspiration with his own title on the NES. The games look graphically similar right down to the roving cameraman. Mr. Masuda would go on to create one of the greatest wrestling video game franchises, Fire Pro Wrestling. In 1986, Mania Challenge was released. The biggest addition was the two-player versus mode. The first player is Dynamite Tommy, and the second player is Hurricane Joe, who is just a clone of the first player. In this game, you only have 3 wrestlers to defeat. After defeating them, you defend your title on an endless loop. You have the addition of a dropkick and a counter move, which is the Atomic Drop. I really wouldn't call this a sequel, but more of a very minor upgrade. The graphics and sound were also polished. Technos decided to remove all of the celebrities due to rumblings of a lawsuit. Now I'm sure a wrestling game released at the height of Hulkamania had to have a few good conversions.
Not.
Commodore 64 owners may recognize this familiar loading screen from previous Taito arcade games. Every other game pictured was released except for Mat Mania. Not one little solitary screenshot has ever surfaced from this project, and after 30 years, I doubt it ever will. The only other version to come out was the X68000 version, and that was only in Japan. For those of you who don't know, the NEC X68 was released in 1987 and was a 16/32-bit computer. It was the first home computer to offer arcade-quality graphics at home. However, it came at a price. In today's inflation, it would cost $6,000 for this machine. The arcade conversions were very close to arcade perfect. In 1990, the Atari 7800 received Mania Challenge. Considering the limitations of the system, this is a pretty good conversion. However, things have been stripped way down. You have a punch, a kick, a shoulder block, an atomic drop, and that's about it. What's there is pretty good. However, every wrestling fan knows you need to have more than 5 moves to be a big success. Speaking of the Atari 7800 version, I wonder if Shawn Michaels ever received his royalty checks. In 26 years, all was quiet on the Mat Mania front, but in 2016, Sony released it for the PS4 network. As you would expect, it's a 1-to-1 conversion of the arcade classic. Now before I sign off, help me help you. Let me know down below exactly what kind of games you'd like to see me cover. And the only way for my channel to grow and to get better is to hear from people like you. Thanks for watching.